well. That's first.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the June 10th meeting of the Muskogee Municipal Authority. Roll call, please.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs. Here. Dan Hall. Marlon Coleman. Jamie Stout.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Cale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
We have a quorum. Item 1, please.
Consider approval of MMA minutes of May 13, 2019.
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Cale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Dan just came. Item 2.
Consider approval of MMA claims for the month ending May 31, 2019.
Mr. Miller.
Yes. As you see, we have the list of claims for the MMA before you, including retention of capital projects over $120,000 for the month. We do recommend approval.
I move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Yes. Patrick Cale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. That concludes the agenda for the Muskogee Municipal Authority, so we will adjourn that and call to order the June 10th meeting of the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority. Roll call.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs. Here. Dan Hall.
Here.
Marlon Coleman. Jamie Stout.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Cale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
We have a quorum, and we will go to item 1.
Consider approval of minutes of May 13, 2019.
Move for approval.
Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Cale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes. Motion carries. Item 2.
Consider approval of a cooperative agreement between the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority and Three Rivers Museum for the implementation of cultural and tourism development of the greater Muskogee community or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
Madam Chair, members of the authority, this annual agreement was previously between the City of Muskogee and Three Rivers Museum. All future agreements will be between the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority and the Three Rivers Museum. The authority will contract the services of the museum to implement cultural and tourism development within the City of Muskogee. The total amount of the agreement is for $50,000 for a one-year term, commencing on July 1st, 2019 and ending on June 30th, 2019. The funds are to be used to employ personnel to operate the museum. The museum is required to comply with all laws, statutes related to the accounts, accounting, reporting, recording, retention, revenues, expenditures of funds. The only changes from the previous agreement is changing out the City of Muskogee to the MRA. Other than that, everything's the same. A copy of the agreement was included in your packet, and Roger Bell with the museum is present if you have any questions. Otherwise, we recommend approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
I would like to make a statement here. I appreciate what Three Rivers Museum does, and I would like to say they reach out in a lot of different ways. Last Wednesday, I went to the state capitol with Roger Bell, and he represented Muskogee well by speaking on the Jefferson Highway. And I appreciate Representative Avery Fix setting up that meeting. But really, Roger organized it, and it not only represented the City of Muskogee, but all those communities that connected to Jefferson Highway Association all throughout the state of Oklahoma to help tourism in our state and in our community. Roger done a 45-minute presentation there before Lieutenant Governor and the Tourism Director, and that really shows that it's not only supporting our museum here in our community, but promoting tourism. I took off a day's vacation to go, and I was very proud of Muskogee and what we brought to the table, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, thank you. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kell.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 3.
Consider approval of a cooperative agreement between the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority and Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame and Museum for the implementation of cultural and tourism development of the Greater Muskogee community or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
This contract was also previously between the City of Muskogee and the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame, and again, will now be with the Redevelopment Authority. The contract's for services to implement cultural and tourism development within the Muskogee community. The total amount of this contract is $55,000 a year, commencing July 1st, 2019, and ending June 30th, 2020. Again, the only changes to this contract was changing City of Muskogee to the MRA. A copy of the contract is in your packet. Derek Gibson, who's a member of the Hall of Fame, is present if you have any questions. Otherwise, recommend approval.
Move for approval?
Second.
Any discussion? I guess we can all brag on the Music Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Patrick Kell.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 4.
Consider approval of resolution number 2770, creating the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority Tourism Board, establishing membership, duties, and authority, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Tucker.
Madam Chair, members of the authority, what you have in front of you here is a resolution creating the Muskogee Redevelopment Tourism Board. As you recall, a few months ago when we were discussing tourism in City Council, the determination was made to use the trust model. Based on that, the City Council directed that tourism funds should be transferred to the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority, and the Redevelopment Authority was further directed to enter into negotiations with the Chamber of Commerce for a new contract to operate tourism. As part of that, the City Council directed the authority to create a board. And so the instant resolution will create that board who will oversee and manage tourism-related activities, specifically the contract, which will be negotiated with the Greater Area Muskogee Chamber of Commerce. The board that is created will be called the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority Tourism Board. It is proposed to be inclusive of 9 members, giving each member of the council the ability to exercise the power of appointment, which of course, like any other boards and commissions, is subject to approval by the entire board. And so each member would make an appointment subject to approval of everyone on the trust, and then it would that person would serve a term yet to be decided. So additionally, the chairman of the Greater Muskogee Area Chamber of Commerce and the city manager or his or her designee would serve in an ex officio, non-voting capacity on that board. Additionally, my office would provide any necessary legal services for that individual tourism board. The terms that we've proposed are to be staggered, 2 members serving 2 terms, 3 members serving 3 terms, and 4 members serving 4 terms. And this will, of course, stagger the terms of the members, which we have found in the past to be very helpful, so that you don't lose all the institutional knowledge all at once when everyone rolls off. So that's why we were recommending to go in that fashion. Now, typically what we have done in some of our other trusts is make appointments, and then at the first meeting of the trustees, let the trustees decide which terms they want to serve. Some folks may only be able to make a 2-year commitment. Some folks may be able to make a 4-year commitment. And so in the Roxy did its trustees like that, as did the Martin Luther King Center. And so that was the Martin Luther King Trust. So that was successful. So that's what staff's recommendation is with regard to the terms. Additionally, the resolution would vest that board with certain authorities, which are articulated in the resolution. That will be to review and consider approval of claims and expenditures on behalf of the authority. To review and recommend a yearly budget, which will ultimately be approved by this body, to consider and approve an annual business plan, scope of work, or project as may be provided for contract. So we're doing this in advance, and we recognize that once a contract is negotiated, there will be some additional terms that will be articulated, such as those that we had discussed in our meetings when you all sat as the council. Additionally, that board will be able to receive reports on tourism activities, be able to review all measurables and deliverables, again, as may be provided for by contract, because those will be more specifically outlined. Additionally, that board will provide advice and direction on tourism-related activities and to be able to effectively manage the tourism-related contracts of which the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority is a party. Two other things, they will be able to prepare and present any reports as may be required by the MRA. So this board will work for you. So you want them to execute some findings, make any reports, that will be their obligation, and they will report those to you. And finally, to perform any other act or obligation as may be directed from time to time by the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority. So finally, we have recommended for adoption some minimal financial procedures. These very closely mirror how the city of Muskogee does its report of claims. And so relating to those procedures, at least once per month, all claims made to the Redevelopment Authority will be presented in writing and will be prepared in such a manner as in the judgment of the executive director may be sufficient to show legality of the claim and what it was for. The tourism board may approve if they find the report has been correct and to approve the actual expenses that were made. If not, they then have the option to direct the city manager to the executive director, who of course is the same person as city manager, to be able to investigate the claim more fully and make a report back to the board. If, however, there is a claim that is disallowed, meaning after review of the claims there are certain things that the tourism board does not want to approve, they can move to disallow those. And upon doing that, that will immediately cause me to convene a meeting of the Redevelopment Authority to advise you all that the board has disapproved a claim. And then we will meet and discuss how we want to move forward with that as a board. And so effectively what we're doing is setting up a board structure so they will have a mechanism to take some of the burden off of you in reviewing these claims and managing these contracts, but at the same time give you all the ability to have control over how that's done and to ensure that the folks that you have appointed to fill this position exercise their duties in reviewing everything and fulfilling it. And so we wanted to make sure and give you as much control over that as possible. And so that's why we've recommended the structure as it is today. So based on that, I'm happy to answer any questions. There will be, if this item is approved, there will be two changes, which I will recommend from the form that was in your packet. The first will be in Section 2, and I have to appreciate Trustee Johnson for bringing this up. There was a provision for that did not articulate how a chairman of the board would be selected, and so I would propose to insert on Section 2 membership after the first sentence the following language: from amongst their members, comma, the board shall select chair and vice chair. And that will ensure that you do have leadership for the board, someone to call the meetings and someone to officiate those events. And then lastly, on Section 5, the first sentence, we have revised to say at least once per month all claims made to the MRA shall be presented by written report for approval by the MRA Tourism Board. This represents a clarification in some of the language that Chair Boydston pointed out, it didn't flow off the tongue. It was a bit confusing. You had to read it a few times, so we wanted to go ahead and clarify that as best we could. And so we're recommending that this change be adopted in the final resolution. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Roy, with the current tourism board that's in place now, will that dissolve come July 1st?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, those members, of course, aren't foreclosed
Right. They
from
can
being
be
appointed to
reappointed.
this, but that's up to the authority.
So what is your,
Move for approval.
Second.
any discussion?
And Madam Chair, is that approved as presented relating to my two changes?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion?
One question.
Okay.
So, Roy?
Yes, sir.
Time frame on recommendations from council on members and coordination of those, that we don't get repeats, and timing I'm a little concerned about.
Well, we would like to have everyone to, our plan is that we've got something on by the 24th so that we can have it effective by July 1. Of course, that is not necessarily wholly in our control. Of course, we're going to be working with the chamber staff to be able to negotiate the contract, but we anticipate that we will have at least a good understanding of how quickly that's going to be, and whether that will in fact be able to be met by that deadline, because that's the last meeting prior to the beginning of the new fiscal year, which the trust as well as the city uses that July 1st date.
Yeah.
And so what our request would be then is to have you all for the next 2 weeks be able to consider who you want to make those appointments, and then on that June 24th meeting that we anticipate having, being able to appoint some of those members as well, so that after July 1, presuming that we have the contract ready to go, they can have an inaugural meeting and get everything ready to go to get down to business. The other thing that I mentioned, Trustee Johnson, that we will do as the city staff, we will do board training for this board that will be comprised, because some of the individuals who you all may appoint may not have experience on our boards, and so we want to make sure and give them all the information possible that they can have in their toolkit to be able to effectively do the job.
What about meeting times?
That will be decided by the trust, but at least once a month, because they'll have to review the claims. So, in that, what we'll probably be doing is, on our first meeting, we'll contact the board members, find out a time that's convenient, and then we will work on setting those meetings. Now, remember, under the Open Meetings Act, you've got to have your meetings preordained by the 15th of December for the preceding year. So all of these meetings will be at special call. And so what we'll do is set up a few special calls until we get to December, and then the board will vote when they want their meetings to be, and the clerk's office will be notified, and then that will be their regular meetings. So our vision was that the trustees would get together on an inaugural meeting and decide what time and date works best for them. And then, of course, since it is a special meeting, it will have to be published at least 48 hours in advance.
I appreciate those clarifications, but that's, to me, really important. Who we're asking to serve on this board is very, very important. And the first thing you do when you ask somebody to serve on the board, well, when is the meeting time and how long are they? Because, you know, some of the most important people that we can get to serve on this are really, really busy. I think that's key to where they can establish that time frame. Thank you for the clarifications, Roy.
Yes, sir.
Any other question or
Yeah, may I be
Ahmed?
recognized, Chairman? Shall be
Yes.
recognized? Also, on these, it's 9 of us up here, it's going to appoint different ones for this board. Now, what do you mean, Councilman Johnson, no repeats? You mean you're talking about some of the people that's on that tourism board now?
Well, meaning that I would make a recommendation, and then you would make that same recommendation of that same person.
Oh, okay.
And then we would null and void that person, and so what would happen, we would think, we had selected Tom,
Yep.
and you had selected Tom, and then we would come back and we wouldn't have 9 people to serve on that board. And so my concern is the time frame that we're looking at, to make sure that we identify those people as quickly as possible, but yet we select the best applicants we possibly can. Because, we would like to have somebody that's very business-minded, that would be willing to serve on this board, yet somebody that knows our community to serve on this board, and yet somebody that knows tourism. I mean, if you looked at how you would like to, or from my perspective, if you looked at how you would like to make up this board, that's the kind of different people you would like to serve on this board. That's not somebody that you can just grab a hold of. You're looking at a select group of people and getting that right match. So that's what I was referring to, that we may be asking the same people. And so as we turn in those names, we might be turning in the same name and not communicating correctly.
I know when we turn these names in, we ought to go over and look at it. Also, for us, I'll say it like this, and I don't mean nothing by it, the minority part of it. Because, like I say, each one of these boards, they need minorities on these boards.
Well,
a lot of times we slack that. But as having minorities on these boards, I'm talking about women, people of color, we do.
We're a diverse council, and if we make recommendations that would represent us, we're going to make a diverse recommendation.
That's fine with me. But that's just one point I want to make sure that's done. Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Roy, could we have 2 to 3 informal meetings without a quorum and visit amongst ourselves about folks and our rationale and what their contribution could be or what have you, but visit with one another so that we're kind of all on the same page.
You can always do that as long as there's not a majority of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson,
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale,
Yes?
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. And that concludes the meeting of the Muskogee Redevelopment Authority. And we will call to order the meeting of June 10th, 2019 of the Muskogee City Council. We will ask Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson to give the invocation, followed by the flag salute.
You would bow with me in prayer tonight. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, as we come to you this evening, dear Lord, we're so thankful for the beautiful day that you have given us. Dear Lord, we're thankful, dear Lord, for keeping us safe during all the flooding that we've had in our community, and with all that has happened, dear Lord, that lives have been spared. We thank you for the generosity that has been shown by so many people in our community, and so much knowledge that has been given and granted to so many of our workers. We thank you for the leadership that you provide to this community through all our workers, our city manager and our assistant city manager. We thank you so much. Dear Lord, I ask that you would be with the City Council this evening as we're conducting business, and as we have conducted business, that we would do it in a professional manner, and we would seek your wisdom and your guidance in everything that we do that would be pleasing unto you. And these things we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge. Roll call, please.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Here.
Marlon Coleman. Jamie Stout.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Kale.
Here?
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
You have had, we need to excuse,
I make the motion we excuse Marlon.
Second?
okay. Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes?
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. You have had the minutes of the regular session on May 13th, 2019, and May 28th, 2019, and special call session, May 21st, 2019. What is your pleasure?
Make a motion we approve said minutes.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes?
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. You've had time to look over the consent agenda, Is there anything anyone wants moved to the regular agenda from the consent agenda?
Make a
Make-
motion, we move for approval.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kell.
Yes?
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 5.
Consider approval of a cooperative agreement between the City of Muskogee and Muskogee County Public Transit Authority to provide public transportation services within the City of Muskogee or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
Mayor, members of the council, this is our annual cooperative agreement between the City of Muskogee and Muskogee County Public Transit Authority. It's to provide public transportation within the City of Muskogee. The city agrees to pay the authority $152,885 for the services. This is a budgeted item. The term of the agreement is from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. No changes from last year's agreement. A copy of the agreement is in your packet. Public Works moved it forward without recommendation at the last Public Works meeting. Ms. Wilson is present again tonight if you have any questions. Otherwise, staff recommends approval.
Thank you. Stephen Ezell has signed up to speak on this subject. Mr. Ezell,
Yes, ma'am.
name and address.
Stephen D. Ezel, 6121 South 6th Street East. I've been actually been hearing some rather concerns recently from the public about the mall's decision to eventually cease use of the mall as a main pickup and departure point for the main bus routes. Some of the statements I've heard have been, how should we say, less than civil. Now, I know that this particular solution or idea has been discussed, but I wanted to bring it up formally. Now, I don't claim it to be a perfect solution, but I believe it is a solution, and that is that we could use the north end of the Muskogee Civic Center as a main departure and pickup point for the city bus routes. First and foremost, getting the buses into and out of the Civic Center area would not be difficult at all. Plus, the use of the Civic Center would still be in main keeping with the bus routes that are currently in place as far as the directions the buses go to start their routes. And in cases, say, for example, if you have certain events going on, you could possibly use the south end as a pickup point. Also, the north end does provide cover that people can be able to stay in under from out of the rain or inclement weather. Plus, you could have benches set up for people to sit on. That way they're not standing on their feet all day long. Well, as I said, and I know this is eventually up to the MCT board, but I thought that as a private citizen who has utilized this system continuously for the past nearly 20 years, I believe it at least is a good suggestion, if not at least a good solution. Also, kind of on a more solemn note, before I leave the podium, I want us all to take a moment to remember Mrs. Marcia Robinson, who left us last Tuesday evening and went home to glory after battling with ALS, better known as Lou Gehrig's disease. She was a wonderful council member. She was a wonderful wife to Ben Robinson for nearly 66 years, and she was just an all-out wonderful lady. And I know many of us here are going to miss her terribly. So I would just like to recommend we take a moment of silence, or private silence or meditation, in her memory. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ezell. Comments, questions from the council?
I know that I was one that had concerns about the contract, and I know Councilor Coleman was, and he's not here this evening. I have talked to Dina and to a couple of the board members. I know there was some challenges, kind of like there is with anything right now with budget and finance, and I know they're working on some of those challenges. Part of some of those challenges is a deteriorating fleet, lack of funding. I think it's just very important that we would ask the Muskogee County Transit to look at any way that they can better serve our community at getting bus routes, continued bus routes that would provide to jobs inside of our community. And I know that that's going to be challenging with the ongoing financial troubles that they're at, but I do believe they're willing to look at any solution that we would propose to them. And I know it takes time to change those routes and to do any modifications, but I'd ask that the council just work with the board at trying to look at any of those options. With that, I move for approval.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Yes, I'll be recognized, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I was just wondering, on the transit, before, when Mr. Miller and I went on the buses, right there at the hospital, do y'all still go in front of the hospital now instead of below the hill?
Yes.
Okay, and also, out there on Gulick Street, is that another drop-off place where the First Baptist Church, the First Assembly of God Church, do y'all still use that as a pickup place?
I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
May I fill this one, please? I have seen it used on a number of occasions as a pickup point if people are actually seen waiting out there.
Thank you, Stephen. Another point I had a concern was when I rode the route with Mr. Miller is right there by Kentucky Fried Chicken. Those apartments right there by Arby's. They would come down that little, right there by Kentucky Fried Chicken and turn on Main Street, but they wouldn't drop they dropped the people off right there on the corner, and the people would have to cross Shawnee to go to the apartments. And I had a concern about that at the time. And I think that Dana, she said she was going to fix that problem.
Darla,
I'm sorry.
I don't have the bus route schedules right in front of me and cannot tell you without looking at them exactly where those stops are right now. I apologize.
Okay. And one more thing is where those kiosks was, like the one over there on Broadway.
Yes.
I think somebody busted that one.
Yes.
And that was in the wrong spot because that wasn't a stop. That was just there.
Right. We have two that are at locations that are not current stops that we're going to take down.
And also the health department, I think it was one there.
We do still use that one. It is a stop.
Is a stop.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at one time, they were planning on putting one over there at Robinson Park. I don't know if they ever decided to do that or not.
If we can fix the broken one when we take it down, that would be a good possibility
Okay.
for where to move it to.
Like I said, those days we rode the buses, all those routes,
Yes.
me and Mr. Miller, I definitely, like I say, you got some wonderful bus drivers. They're very friendly, and
Thank you.
they really take care of the customers, the people.
They pride themselves on that.
They really do. I've seen that, and the people just love them to death. So thank you.
Thank you.
Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes?
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 6.
Consider approval of cooperative agreement between the City of Muskogee and Main Street Muskogee to promote the economic well-being and development of the community by enhancing and revitalizing the downtown area or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
Mayor, members of the council, this is our annual agreement between the City of Muskogee and Main Street Muskogee for the purpose of enhancing and revitalizing the downtown area. The term of the agreement is from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. The cost of the agreement is $60,000. That is $20,000 less than last year's agreement. This is a budgeted item. A copy of the agreement is in your packet, and Mr. Newby with Main Street Muskogee is present if you have any questions.
This is one that we had passed through with no action last week also, and me and Councilor Coleman had also discussed it, and we had heard some things regarding it, and I think it's just lack of communications. I talked with John Newby also. One of the things that I would like to see us possibly do is kind of like we had done with Chamber of Commerce, is where we would just have coffee with the director, some of the council that would be interested in communication, just have coffee or have lunch with the director, three or four of us, where it wouldn't be a quorum, but have coffee every once in a while or lunch with the director and kind of find out what's going on with Main Street Muskogee, where we have a better communication, and then anything that we're hearing in the community, and kind of know what's going on with Main Street. Some of us are very connected with what's going on in Main Street, and some of us are not so connected with what's going on in Main Street. A lot is happening, but I think it would give us a better connection with Main Street Muskogee and a better connection with the council, and I really think that would help in a lot of ways. So that's what I would like to see happen. I just wanted to see how the council felt about that.
I agree, and I think there are other areas of interest when we can have coffee or lunches to visit with other bodies as well.
And I think it would just be a voluntary thing that, Mr. Newby could call us up and say, hey, if you're interested, let's, get a couple of us to meet, and then those that could come, and then he would offer that to the others that could not come at another time, and just keep us more informed of what's happening. And I think that would help us all be on the same page and know what's going on. We are seeing, more vitality in the Main Street. Of course, it wouldn't be all what we want, but it takes a slow growth in Main Street. We do appreciate so much, the shot in the arm that the foundation has given, to the Main Street, but it takes a long time going. With that, I make a motion to move forward with this agreement.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kell.
Yes?
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 7.
Consider approval of the cooperative agreement between the City of Muskogee and Neighbors Building Neighborhoods for the purpose of applying for grants and grant activities on behalf of the city and other not-for-profit activities that enhance the economic well-being of the Muskogee community or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
This is the annual agreement between the City of Muskogee and Neighbors Building Neighborhoods for the purpose of applying for grants and grant activities on behalf of the city. MBM also serves as the construction administrator for the animal shelter project, which is currently getting started. The city will pay MBM $30,000 for their services. The term of the contract is from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Both Public Works and staff has recommended approval of this agreement.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kell.
Yes?
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Abstain due to my employment with Neighbors Building Neighborhoods.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 8.
Consider approval of a contract between the City of Muskogee and Hilldale Public Schools to furnish law enforcement and school resource officer functions for the school district campuses or take other necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
This is the annual contract between the City of Muskogee and Hilldale Public Schools for the purpose of providing law enforcement and school resource officer functions. City to provide 2 officers, 1 at each campus, and that's in conjunction with their patrol duties. Hilldale will pay 71% of the officer's total salary, including fringe benefits, and I think that is up from last year, so they're paying a higher percentage. The city will pay the remaining 29%. The term of the contract is July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Eric Puckett, the superintendent of Hilldale Schools, is present if you have any questions.
I move for approval. I know they're a great asset to both campuses there at Hilldale.
And I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
This is the same reduced rate that we've talked about in the past, that it's at the same rate that we've been talking about.
I'm not.
No, we've talked over the last few years of the school district paying more each year, and this is more than they've paid in.
Yeah,
past
last year was 68%. This year they're paying 71%, if that's what you're referring
it's-
to.
yeah,
It is an
just one.
increase. Yes.
So it's
yes.
on the same agreement that we've been talking about.
Yes.
And when we decided to do that, it was for them to pay for basically the officers' time that they were using at the school. And I think we should be about there by now, shouldn't we? About the number of days that they're working for the school versus the time that they're off for the city.
Yeah, and so we can talk about that further, because at some point,
I mean, I don't want them to pay 100% of the
Okay, well,
officers, but I'd like for them for it to top out somewhere for them.
Okay.
Right.
So some of the impression I'd gotten before was that we were looking to move towards 100% in the past. If that's not the case, then I think we talked about 75% being about the amount of time that they spend. So we are very close then.
Because, I mean, there's no sense of them having to foot the whole bill for the officer if we're going to use them in the summertime and on the off time. So that's kind of what I was looking at. I was just making sure that we weren't going to continue to raise this up till we get 100%, because I don't think that'd be fair to the school to pay for somebody that's not there when they need them, when they're not needing them.
A fair and equitable agreement.
Yeah, Superintendent Puckett and I had talked about perhaps getting to 75% as early as next year, and then we could, and then we would.
And I've heard a lot of good things about this program, where the officers are building relationships with the kids. Their relationships have helped my job out a lot at my school, and just to have that presence there, we have a good communication with each other and stuff, as far as when it comes to kids in our neighborhood and our community. So like I said, I'm definitely going to second it, and thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, maybe we recognize Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
That's one good thing I like. At first I was really against this, and I I went out to the school and met with the children and also the officers, Officer Ford and Officer Spears, and those officers out there are those children's heroes. And one good thing I like about it is that I don't care what time of day it is or what time of night, those officers told me those students can call them anytime. I'm sure it's like that with Muskogee High with Councilman Hall. They can call you anytime, because you make good relationships with those kids also. But like I say, I'm just, proud of Hilldale and proud of Muskogee High too also. But I think it's a very good program, because like I say, I was against it at first. But it takes going out to places, just like the buses. It takes going to these places so you can get to see the feel of it, see how things are actually done. And I'm a hands-on person. You can tell me one thing, but I'm going to go check it out. So I'll turn the floor back over to you, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes?
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 9.
Consider approval of the ratification of a contract between the City of Muskogee and L&L Construction Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $72,250 for inspections, cleanup, and repairs at the Muskogee wastewater treatment plant, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley.
Yes, Mayor and Council. This was a contract with L&L Construction, who has been doing a lot of our work on the OWRB loan work at the plant. Already had a contract out there, and they were there and ready to mobilize when the plant came out of the water. So they put together crews that have been working, cleaning up mainly the electrical panels and such. So this contract was put together to ratify the work that they're doing. And we're doing a great job, and we're to the point that we're close to turning things on, and hopefully by the end of the week we'll have the plant running if everything goes well. So,
Great job.
Yeah.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion or question from the council? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes?
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Before we go to item 10, I understand that OMAG needs a little time to set up, to present whatever they're going to tell us. So I would like for someone to make a motion that we take a 10-minute recess.
I make a motion we take a 10-minute recess.
Second.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries, and we'll take a 10-minute recess. And we're back. Could we please have the roll call?
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs. Here. Dan Hall.
Here.
Marlon Coleman. Jamie Stout.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Kale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
And we are accounted for. Item 10, please.
Consider approval of resolution number 2768 regarding the participation in the OMAG recognition program and receive a presentation from Oklahoma Municipal Assurance Group on best practices for Oklahoma municipalities and their governing bodies and take other necessary action.
Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. You may remember we did this last year, which was our first time, and we hope everybody learned a lot, and so we're going to repeat it again tonight. So if you all are aware, OMAG has a recognition program for those cities who adopt a best practices guide, which we did last year, and also go through a training seminar, which we will be doing tonight. For those municipalities who do that, they are entitled to a $10,000 refund from our insurance premium. So obviously, our city manager is very frugal and so is urging us to do that. And so we have been fortunate to have Bill Tackett and David Weatherford here tonight to talk to us and to give us some training. And I do want to give a shout out to David's daughter Aubrey, who is helping with some of the paperwork and collecting everything for David. So with that, Mayor, I think I'll turn it over to David Tackett.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And we're glad to be back. It's a short year since we were here, and so we're grateful that Muskogee is a part of OMAG, and thank you for having us back and participating in the recognition program. We're in year 2 of the recognition program, and so we'll have a different program this year than we had last, and hopefully you'll find some value in it. This is the only training I'm aware of where we bring the training to you. That way, we hope that everyone hears the same information at the same time, and we have the discussion that helps the board understand their job and feel more comfortable doing it. Mayor, what I like to tell folks is that you all are in the process business, and I'm a latecomer to the process view of the world. Because when I was a kid, everything was an event. Your birthday, Christmas, Halloween, school's finally out, deer season opens. Everything was an event. And the process was the boring stuff that happened in between events when it really didn't seem like very much was going on. And the process might still be boring, I don't know. But you all are in the process business. As a matter of fact, you know, some of you all might serve your whole tenure on this body and only be part of the process that advances the organization to the next event. And you can tell if you're in an event versus a process, because if you're at an event, folks will be taking your picture and cutting a ribbon. So tonight we're going to talk to you about the process of governing and moving the organization forward. We hope you all will remember to take home your world's best coffee mugs that are in front of you. Inside of those are the world's best pen, and they happen to write in any language, Mayor, and that's a convenient thing for you all to know. You have 2 pieces of literature in front of you. One's a blue cardstock and one is a green cardstock. The blue cardstock is OMAG's retention program. We started that June 1st, 2017. You're already in it. You're automatically enrolled. There's no forms to fill out. Congratulations. You're a part of the retention program. We take 20% of your liability premium. We set it aside in a loss fund. And depending on the claims experience you have, you can get some or all of that money back. Our first checks will go out September of 2020. because it's a 3-year process to determine about a claim that might come in or a lawsuit that might result. But every year between July 1st and June 30th, in the retention program, you have the opportunity to get a check back from OMAG, not a credit on your bill, a check you can use for any lawful purpose. Muskogee's maximum benefit under this program is $50,000 a year. And that's what makes OMAG different than an insurance company. An insurance company would never do that. The green card stock is the recognition program, and it has 4 steps to it. As you'll recall from last year, perhaps, we were going to watch a short video about insurance. We're going to take a stability test, 10 questions over the 10 key areas of municipal operations. You all have had an opportunity to review and, if necessary, update your best practice handbook, and then receive training from David Weatherford. You know, a moment ago I said that I was kind of an event-centric person in a process-centered world. And I don't have anything new to tell you tonight. I don't know anything new. Anything I knew is something I went to a different city council meeting and stole it from them and brought it over here to you. So I don't know anything different than the Apostle Paul told the Greeks in Corinth 2,000 years ago, and that is, things are a process. The process in an agrarian economy is that you plow, you plant, you water, you weed, and you wait. And the good Lord will give the increase. You plow, you plant, you water, you weed, and you wait. And the good Lord will give the increase. And so the process is step by step. The waiting part is waiting for your efforts to bear fruit. Your job, your process, and your success relies on following a process. To set a strategic direction for a community, to adopt policies that help staff take you there, and to monitor results. We have a short video that we hope will play. Our fingers are crossed. What do you know?
Hello, I'm Susie Paulson, General Counsel for the Oklahoma Municipal Assurance Group, or OMAG, and this is Understanding Your Declarations page. The Municipal Liability Protection Plan Declarations page, often abbreviated as DEC page, is an overview of your coverages and limits for your city or town. Listed at the top of the page is the plan member information. Typically, this is the city or town. On occasion, it may be a city trust or authority if that entity has chosen to have their own policy. Each member will also have an agreement number that will start with the letters GLA and be followed by a string of numbers. This is a unique identifier that is only associated with your specific plan. In addition, each plan has a plan period. This period lists the effective dates of the policy. General liability covers 8 areas: bodily injury, property damage, personal injury, errors and omissions, pollution damage, defense reimbursement, cyber data breach, and uncovered employment defense. Each of these have been organized by a letter to help differentiate the coverages. So let's look at each of these separately, starting with general liability coverage A, bodily injury. This coverage accounts for claims with an actual medical injury where the claimant has sought medical treatment from a doctor. Coverage B is property damage and includes any physical damage to property. Coverage C is personal injury and includes emotional distress, inconvenience, annoyance, etc. Coverage D is errors and omissions and includes any errors or breach of duties by any plan member or its employees. Continuing with general liability, let's jump to coverage I, pollution damage. This covers damages to property which are caused by a pollution incident under certain conditions. Coverage J is defense reimbursement for inverse condemnation and zoning cases. In these cases, the city can be reimbursed up to $10,000 for expenses that are incurred defending an inverse condemnation or zoning case. Coverage K is cyber data breach coverage that is provided by OMAG through our partners at Beasley. Unlike the other coverages mentioned, Coverage K has a separate policy document. Coverage L is a defense-only coverage for certain employment cases, such as the Family Medical Leave Act, or FMLA, the Oklahoma Anti-Discrimination Act, or OADA, and certain workers' comp retaliation claims. OMAG offers auto liability and auto and equipment physical damage coverage. Auto liability, coverage E and F, covers bodily injury, personal injury, and property damage. Coverages G and H cover any auto or equipment physical damage. OMAG's limits of liability follow the Oklahoma Governmental Tort Claims Act, which is $25,000 for property damage and $125,000 for personal injury, bodily injury, and errors or omissions. As General Counsel of OMAG, I am confident that the coverages OMAG provides have you properly covered with the appropriate limits. If you would like additional information, please visit the OMAG website or contact the OMAG Member Services Department.
You know, Mayor, for a movie about insurance, that's fairly painless, you know. It could be a lot worse. And so Susie Paulson is our general counsel. We have 5 attorneys on staff. David always says that's almost enough. And, of course, there's never a charge if anyone contacts anyone at OMAG for any assistance we might bring. Not speaking this evening, but with us is Steve Whitlock. He's Executive Director of the Oklahoma Municipal Management Services Interlocal. It's a brand-new interlocal. It's 11 and a half months old and serves about 41 communities in the state. Came about as a partnership between the CMAO and OMAG's initiation. Our main presenter this evening is David Weatherford. David is kind of a unique city attorney. He's a circuit rider city attorney for about 30 years. He was city attorney for the city of Coweta and currently serves the communities of Manford, Sand Springs, and Mounds. David became a city attorney in 1988, and the way I remember that date is that's the year before Taylor Swift was born, so it's easy for me to keep track of that. So, David has done this training with me and Aubrey about 90 times since June of 17. We've been to about 90 city council meetings in 23 months. It's your turn, David.
And about 100 before that, it seems like. So thanks for having us. I think I was not able to be here last year because of a scheduling conflict, and Bill and I and Aubrey have been all over the state, so every place from Broken Bow to Boise City. We usually like to mention that the training program is designed to be similar every place we go. We don't change it based on the city because I think the issues are the same every place. Bill didn't mention too much, but we get to start with taking a test, and you've taken it before several times. We'll look at some of your past results here in a few minutes. Even though the recognition program is only a couple years old, we've been doing this training for about 9 years. And over that time, thousands and thousands of elected officials around the state have taken this test, just as you have in the past. I'll go through and explain each question real quick. It'll give us a way to measure how we think we're doing on the key operations of government. The stability test was designed to help us focus on really what city government is about and what are the 10 categories. And we believe this is a good list of the 10 categories of city operations that are important for day-to-day operations. So let's go through them real quick. I'll explain what the question is. You're going to give a score somewhere between 1 and 10. Don't be embarrassed by whatever your score is. If you don't know, that's fine. If you have questions, feel free to ask. The first question on the test is financial stability. Sorry. And the question is, do you have enough money to operate? A high score of 10 is you have a written policy that requires a reserve of at least 20% in a general fund, and you fully fund that reserve. That amount comes from the financial expert in the state, the Crawford and Associates, and their recommended standard that cities should have. A low score is we're lucky to make payroll and we're concerned about it. And we've been cities in the last 2 months who have given us a score of 0 or 1. If you don't know the answer, that's fine. I had a councilman raise his hand and say, I have absolutely no idea where we are financially. I've only been on the council 15 years, and I've never once gotten a financial report. That's the reason we do this, because you should understand the finances a little bit. So somewhere between 1 and 10, how financially stable is the city of Muskogee? Because one of our goals should be to have a financially stable organization over a long period of time. Okay? Question 2, how stable is the governing body? This is where you get to evaluate yourselves, and you'll notice that Bill and Aubrey and Steve and I do not take the test. We don't evaluate anyone. We ask you to do it, because your input's what matters. A high score for governing body stability is great, well-informed, engaged elected officials. When you have vacancies, you have very good candidates. It's considered an honor to serve on the city council. That should be our goal, and that's a high score. A low score is you look around and say, I wish we could throw them all out and start over, and you write down a 1. And we've had a group write down a 1 recently. We didn't, they did. So how do you evaluate your elected officials? Because we want a stable group over a long period of time. Okay? Number 3, how are your city council meetings? The high score is they're professional, businesslike. We conduct the business of the city. They're a joy to attend. I hate to miss one. Our work is important and I like being here. That's a high score. A low score is I wish I never had to go to another one. And we need to find a way that it's enjoyable both for you and for your staff. They should enjoy coming to your meetings. And a more stable organization will work toward having better meetings and good meetings. Okay? Part 4, how do you rate the workforce of your city? And that's a hard one to judge with the size of city because of the number of employees. But the overall workforce of the city, a high score is a city that has a lot of employees who care about the city. You have stable employment. It's considered a good place to work. If you have vacancies, others want to work here. A low score is we have lots of claims, lots of disruption, lots of turnover. And I like to give the example, we were in a city a couple of weeks ago in which they recognized 2 city employees who had been with the city more than 40 years. That means it's been a good place to work. They've enjoyed working there. It should be an honor to work for a city. And from your standpoint, you should be glad to have long-term employees. Okay? Part 5, public image. What does the public think of the city of Muskogee? A high score is there's not a lot of public input. We're not being criticized at public meetings constantly. The public seems to trust us to make good decisions because we've been elected to represent the community, and they trust us to be a regional leader. That's a high score, and that's what we should strive for. A low score is there's no public confidence in us, continually have disgruntled citizens telling us we don't know what we're doing and criticizing us. So somewhere between 1 and 10, what's the image of City of Muskogee city government? Part 6, you've dealt with this recent. Many of us have, how do we deal with a crisis? Government exists to deal with crises, those things that go wrong, whether it's a tornado or a flood or some other event. The public depends on government in those instances. A high score is we come together as a team, we work very hard, we know what our role is, and we know how to implement our emergency management plans because we're prepared before it happens. A low score is every day's a crisis. We have no idea what to do when something goes wrong. We all point fingers. Okay? So how do you deal with a crisis? Part 7 is a little bit unusual, economic development. 20 years ago, this would not have been a factor that we would have measured with a city because cities stayed out of economic development. It's a new thing because federal money for cities dried up, state money for cities mostly dried up, and cities have taken a much more active role, especially in the larger cities, especially in urban areas, especially in high traffic areas. We know when we go around the state and give this test that when we're in western Oklahoma, the scores will be lower because they're trying to survive. And we know in urban areas the scores generally will be higher because the council's more involved and the city's more involved in economic development. A high score is that you're actively involved in economic development projects, you think you can make a difference, and you think you will impact where the city goes economically. A low score is we've chosen not to be involved, and you get to decide that. Part 8 is how well do we do as a group in planning and goal setting. A high score is the elected officials, administration, and staff work well together. We have a good roadmap for where we want to go, and we do a good job of planning our future. A low score is we get by day to day. We don't worry about long-term issues. Number 9, this is where the city manager cringes. It's not directed at the city manager, but how stable is the administration of the city? A high score is management, upper management, not just city manager, but upper management's been stable for a long time. If we have vacancies, we attract good candidates. It's considered a good city manager's job and a good job for upper administration to work because it's stable. That's a high score. A low score is we change every few months whether we need to or not. We were in a city that had been through 3 city managers in 3 months. And usually I would tell them, and I did tell them, it's probably not a city manager issue. It's something else wrong. But they literally went through 3 city managers in 3 months. Our goal should be to have stable management because we know that if we're stable in upper management, we'll be more successful. It's just the way the business world works, and that's what you are as a business. You're a municipal corporation, and you're the board of directors for a municipal corporation that's running a business. It has some public components. It has a lot of state law restrictions on what you do, but you're really a board of directors. And a board of directors should want stable upper management to have long-term success. So how do you rate your administration from 1 to 10? And a high score is a stable management group. In part 10, we see in a lot of places problems are caused by poor communication. So a high score on communication is I'm getting the information I need. Everyone is sharing the key vital information that's needed to make my decisions. And we understand how information flows properly as a city. A low score is I have no idea what's going on around this place. I wish somebody would tell me. Okay? So those are the 10 questions. We'll gather those. We will give you a cumulative result. And Bill will get that back to Mike soon, and then we're going to look at some results and talk about some of the options. Bill is handing out a separate handout. This is a suggested improvement list that's developed by a number of officials around the state. It's not fair for us to come in and give a test and leave town and not offer something. Take this home, do whatever you want to with it. If you have a good idea that should be on this list, let us know so we can share it with others. As Bill mentioned, we like to steal ideas from other places because a lot of cities are doing great work and we need to share it with others, and I'm sure you are too. And it's important that we help each other. How do you compare? Some of you may remember these scores from last year. I like to point out how some other cities have done because having statewide comparisons brings us more knowledge and more information. I usually like to focus on the low scores around the bottom. And if you look at those, a city over 20,000 scored a 51. It's a failing score. That was the 4th time they took the test. When we did the training there, they wouldn't sit at the same table with each other. And if we were to go back tomorrow, they still wouldn't because they're strongly divided amongst themselves. They are doomed for failure because of how they do business. And it's interesting to see that. We know that overall, public image is consistently the lowest score. We know that crisis management is consistently the highest score. We have a couple of cities that have scored 12s and 14s. Those aren't the only ones that have been below 20. But it is a concern when we go to a city and give this test and the elected officials and the staff gives a score that's less than 20. That means they're failing in every category and they choose to. And that concerns us. And that's why we're here, to try to address some of those issues that we see around the state. It's also encouraging when we see good scores because it tells us that some cities are really doing things well. And if we look at your scores, I think we see some of that. And these are the last 2 times you've taken this test. In 2016, you scored an overall 73, and in 2018 had really pretty dramatic improvement to a 79, almost an 80. Very few cities around the state have scored over 90 because they're hard on themselves and they judge themselves very critically. So 79 is a very good score. I think when we look at that from your standpoint, you're consistent with the rest of the state. Public image scored the lowest, and crisis management was probably close to the highest. Meetings was high, which is very good, and I would agree with it sitting through your meeting. Over 9 years of doing this, if there's anything I think we've made some progress around the state about, it is having better meetings. And hopefully that's something you continually work on. You're doing well with it, but you need to know you're doing well with it. So I want to make that point. We see a lot of places that aren't. And usually I ask a simple question when we see a low score on meetings. Then why do you keep doing it that way? It's entirely within your control. So that's a credit to the mayor and all of you that you really have done a good job with having good meetings. I think we have a chart that's just the comparison between the 2 years, but you've got all of those scores. These are the categories that are on the test, and I really want to talk a little bit by asking some questions and really get some input from you. And since the mayor is the mayor, we usually start with the mayor and ask on these categories some questions. And really for mayor, a real simple question. What's the most enjoyable part of it, of being on council?
Well, you get to know what's going on and have a hand in maybe which direction it goes. And I enjoy working with these people. And I think we are doing as well as we can under the circumstances which we operate in.
It's not easy work, is it?
We have good staff. They make it easier than it could be.
Right. Do you have any board members who are new? Who's the least amount of tenure? Ms. Hibbs, how long have you been on council?
A month and a half.
Month and a half. You are new then. And Mayor, how long have you been on council? And I know you've only been mayor a short time.
Right, I just fell into this job. But I have about 11 or 12 years.
Good. Who else is there anyone else with more than 10 years council tenure? No? You're it.
I'm in.
What advice would you give Ms. Hibbs about how to be a good council member?
To just pay attention and do exactly like I do. She has more experience actually in business and running things than I do, so I don't think she needs much advice.
If you
Well,
could
really,
walk in her shoes, you've done a good job.
And Ms. Hibbs, what question would you have for your cohorts about what you should expect as a council member?
Be patient with me. This is all new to me. My background has basically been in state government and county governments. This is my first attempt at city government, but it's very interesting.
Has it been easier than you expected?
No.
No? Why not?
No, it really has. We had the disaster, which, you know, has
Right.
really pulled everybody in this community together. So it makes you proud that you live here. And like I said, I think we have the best employees in the state. So
It's important to be an active part of it, isn't it?
it is.
I mean, it really is. As a country, haven't we lost a lot of interest in being involved
Yes.
compared to the way it used to be?
I love my community, so anything I can do to make it better, I'm going to try.
One of the things, as Bill mentioned, we've been doing this a while. One of the things I've learned in doing this training over 9 years, taking hundreds and hundreds of surveys of elected officials and staff members, I've always been curious why some cities work toward becoming more stable and continually improve and get better, and others choose not to. And I think one of the factors is one of the most important parts of your role. Good city councils attract good people to be a part of it. Think about that for a minute. They really do. And I think it's an honor to the rest of them that you're willing to serve with them,
Well, it is an honor for me, too.
to want to be a part of their organization. The reverse of that is also true. Bad city councils attract bad council members sometimes, and they perpetuate themselves. And one of the things we've tried to address in those situations where a council and a city will evaluate themselves and say they're failing is to challenge them to do better so that they can break that cycle. Some of the others, I know Mr. Hall was here before, and Mr. Van and Mr. Johnson. I know all three of you have been here when I've been here before. What advice would you give to the new council member? Since you have some experience, and Mr. Reed may have been also, I'd be curious, what advice do you give or would you recommend for new council members? And maybe we start with Mr. Reed over here. Any thoughts?
New council members, I guess I would say that I always remember that we are privileged to be the voice of the voiceless in our community, in our wards. And so in the decisions we make, we, make sure that we realize that we have people standing on our shoulders. We have people standing behind us, depending on us to make the best decisions for not only our wards, but the entire community. So we, just got to be conscious of the fact that we are the eight that have been elected by the citizens of this community to be that voice and to make those good decisions, the best decisions we can for our community.
It's a part of being the leader in the community is that you've been entrusted with that power,
Most
and it really is an important part of what you do. It really is.
Most definitely.
Mr. Hall?
Whatever Janie Boydston tells me to.
You obviously have been trained by the mayor previously, right?
No.
That's not true. He does not do to suit me.
Never. The one thing that if you're going to become a city council person up here, you have to be truthful in what you do. We have a lot of fun with what we do up here, but at the end of the day, this council's pretty honest and truthful in what we do. I think that was echoed when we had the CIP passed just a couple months ago or last month by the amount of people that got out and voted and what they voted for it and how much it passed. In almost the 8 years that I've been up here, we have been honest with our community. We've raised water rates, and everybody thought, man, they're going to run us out of this place. None of us will ever be back on city council. And our community says, hey, we understand why we have to do that. We raised trash rates and sewage rates, and they knew why we did it for, because we had to build our infrastructure back up, and they knew those things. So I think being honest with our community and being out in front of things and telling them why we're doing it, like the road projects we've got coming up, they voted for it, they believe in us, and I think you just got to be honest with people and don't think that they can't understand it. Just give them the information, and they'll stand behind you.
Good point. Mr. Johnson?
Be part of a team and be willing to listen. Sometimes that's hard to do, but it's being willing to listen to constituents and being willing to listen to other co-counsel. The greatest thing here is being part of this team.
Yeah.
If you look at this council, I know you're in front of a lot of city councils, but there's diversity here between men, women, race, colors, amount of money that each one of us makes, and it represents our community. And I think that's what's strong about our council. We represent our community very well. And I think that's what makes our council strong, and that's what makes our community strong. So that through that diversity, and yet through that diversity, we can have a strong voice for our community.
Well, and I know you've been through our training before, and we used to emphasize a lot that it's important that if we have a difference of opinion, we can do it in the right way.
Yep.
There's a reason there's not one of you in charge, that there are multiple people who get to vote. And there will come a time where each one of you is on the short end of a vote. That's just going to happen.
Yeah.
But the right way to do it is to accept it and move on.
But we all know we still have the same passion and love, and it's Muskogee.
That's right. A difference of opinion doesn't mean a dislike.
Nope.
And one of the things we see nationally and statewide and citywide, no one's teaching civility in local government. And that's a part of what we've got to have. You'll make better decisions. You'll be more successful over time. And that starts with the group of you finding a way to get along with each other. We're going to see a survey in a minute that reconfirms that you may have seen before, but it's exactly for that point. Mr. Van, what advice do you have for someone who's new?
Well, myself as a councilman up here, I always try to, I don't try, I do, to try to keep my constituents informed. Also, like when somebody calls my phone, I just don't say, well, I know I can get your pothole fixed, but I go meet the people. I meet everybody that call my phone. And I'm the type of councilman, they'll tell you up here, when the city workers get through or the contractors get through, I'm going by and looking to see what they done.
Yeah.
Because our money takes care of that. And I'm, like I said, I'm real picky on that situation.
Good.
And like I said, I just thank God for being up here. And on my bio, I always put, if I can help somebody as I pass along this way, my living won't be in vain.
Well, good. Good. Being a part of it is a big help to the community. It should be for all of you. Mr. Kale, how long have you been on council?
Oh, about 3 years, I think.
Okay. Has it been an enjoyable experience?
It sure has.
What's the best part of it?
I think the best part of it is recognizing and realizing the commitment that my peers here on council have made. I may get the short end of the stick on a vote, if you want to call it that. Mr. Reed may. You never know. But at the end of the day, nobody has hurt feelings. Nobody takes it personal. I think by and large, we all come together on most issues. But I really respect each and every one on this council, and they're good people. I know them, but I really respect, I know their love for the community, as others have love for our community, but I respect their commitment to serve and the commitment they make to serve this group, because as much as they are committed to the city of Muskogee, I feel like they're committed to me, as I feel committed to them. We got a good group of people here.
A good point. And I had a mayor tell me years ago, I was in a city and they were extremely successful and been stable for a long time. And I asked that simple question, how have you maintained this? Why is it that you're able to have a stable city that can operate this way for decades? And he had a real simple answer, because we respect each other's vote. And he told the story that when he was first elected to the city council, the mayor called him aside and said, the one lesson you always need to remember is that if you don't respect your cohort's vote, your vote will become meaningless. And it's a good point. It's the way to make your vote meaningless. It doesn't change their mind, it doesn't change their vote usually, but to attack someone else's vote and not have respect for their opinion, in the end will make your vote meaningless. And so he said over decades, he had taught that lesson. Everyone knew who came on council. He told that story. And they still maintain that stability. Really, for the one word you use, respect. It really is the key to it, isn't it?
Undoubtedly.
It really is. For a long period of stability, I think it is. I think I skipped Ms. Stout. How long have you been on council?
About a year and a half.
Enjoyable?
Yes, and like kind of just echoing what everybody says, we make a great team. We, agree to disagree on different things, but at the end of the day, we care about our community and want the best for Muskogee.
Well, good. Most places I go, I like to pick on the city attorney, so I really should have started with Roy. What thoughts do you have about this group? I mentioned to you before, and the scores confirm it. Aubrey was able to put your scores together real quick, and your scores have gone up again, 84.45, which is good. That's a very, very good score. But Roy, what?
I think one of the most important things for a council member to be successful is if you don't understand something, ask a question. A lot of times you'll have folks who are either new or just now coming onto the council who, kind of want to sit back and they'll vote on some things, really not knowing what they're voting on. And what I've discovered in this group is if they don't understand something, they will not wait until the meeting to ask the question. They'll call either the city manager or the city clerk or myself.
Good.
And we like that. Because, we are here to serve them, and so when they have a question or they need information, we want to be able to provide it as quickly as possible because we know that is part of the decision-making process is having that information. And so I applaud all these folks for doing that well in advance whenever there's an issue.
Good, and it's a key part of being a part of a team as a group, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's the way you would expect to treat them, and the way they should treat you, is that we're in this together, and if we need more information, let's get more information. But it's not surprise time at meetings, and we see that places we go. So that is a good point. Mike, as city manager, what would you want to add?
I have a great relationship, I think, with these 9. As far as advice or how we work together, one of the things that I'm very grateful for is that this group, when they set a goal and you work towards it, they don't move the goalposts. They don't change. I've been at places before where you start down a road and you do something for 6 months, and then they say, "Oh, that's not important. Never mind. Go do something else." And so, we set up, a year and a half ago almost, that we wanted to improve our streets through whatever means we could, and so we stuck with that for a year plus, and we came up with a good plan. The council backed it 100%, and we got a great vote in the community. And so they set the direction, then they let us go try and tackle it, and then we achieve good results. And I really appreciate them setting the direction and letting us go.
What's the hardest part of the job for you?
I think probably with anybody in public service, and them included, is sometimes you hear the loud voices are the negative ones a lot of times. And so you realize that I know how hard these guys work and try to make our community better, and then sometimes the criticism from a few loud people can distract you from the overall success that's going on. And so that's hard, just refocusing ourselves and myself too, to just say, you know what, we're gonna come in tomorrow and do a good job, whether people recognize it or not.
We've done a lot of surveys of city employees and have asked that question: what's the hardest part of your job? What's the most disliked part of your job as a city employee? And by far, number one on the list, unfair public criticism. And for the elected officials, you really should realize, especially those who, police officers these days, utility billing clerks, those who deal with the public every day, they're getting criticized every single day of the week. They're getting called names, they're getting, you name it. And it is a tough job. It really is difficult, and that's why it's even more important for the council to be a team that's a part of the group that's trying to solve it and make it better. Can't be a part of that public criticism that goes on, because they're already getting that. You're probably getting it every day. Most city managers get it every day. And I think if we were to survey city managers, they would say that's probably lack of appreciation, I think, ranks high, but unfair criticism ranks high too. So that's just a part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You become immune to it and learn to accept it a little bit, but it shows the need from the elected officials for constant support of upper management to be successful, because you've got to stay in and keep working toward long-term goals, because you mentioned a year and a half on roads. It'll be another year and a half to get them all built, won't it, or more?
A lot more.
It's a long-term project. And government moves slow for a reason. So, and I know Tammy is fairly new as city clerk, a couple of years probably.
That's correct.
Good experience?
Great experience.
Good.
Experience. A lot of respect up here. I've heard a lot of enlightening stories from other cities, from city clerks, so I definitely appreciate the staff that we have, and the council members and the mayor.
It's always good to see cities that improve over time, because Bill and I have talked a lot about this program and going around the state, and OMAG is probably the only meeting where somebody's going to write you a check for $10,000 for having this meeting. OMAG needs cities to be successful, because there will be less claims, not just financial, but we'll get better people who serve, and over a long period of time, government will be better. I'll go through real quick. Some of you may have seen this a few years ago. I don't think it was a part of last year's training. As I mentioned, we've taken a lot of surveys, and the question is, what can you do to improve your city as an elected official? And these are the top 10 answers. Number 10, make your meetings business meetings. Obviously, you've done well with that. You're the board of directors for a municipal corporation, so you set the tone. It's not a social gathering or a political event or a debate class. It's a business meeting. Number 9, have a long-range approach to your city. You're doing that, and you mentioned roads, but that's a good thing. Have a planning retreat. Hopefully you found some time to do that. I don't know if you have an annual retreat or something like that. In Sand Springs, we have 4 quarterly lunch retreats that are long-range planning events, and that's worked well. But whatever works well for your city. Having a board handbook, hopefully, I know Roy mentioned you've done that. Make it a living, growing document that over time helps document your legacy as council members and what your board is doing, so that whoever comes next will know what they're supposed to do. They'll know what the job is, and you'll have a lasting impact in your role by doing that. So I encourage you to review that annually and make it better. We've seen some great work with city council handbooks around the state. It's one of the advantages we've had in going places. When we started this program, there were only 2 or 3 cities in the state that had a handbook for the elected officials. We're now over 50. And I really believe over time you can have a big impact on your community by making that something very specific to Muskogee, so that the next person who serves in your seat will know your experience and what they can do to better serve. And that really should be our goal, isn't it? How do we help someone else who comes along after us? Number 8, have a plan when you show up, and Roy mentioned that. Ask the questions in advance before the meeting, and that's a good thing. Promote your city. You define your city's reputation. Cities are just like individuals. Every city has a reputation, and we should be working to improve it. Publicly defend your city employees. They get plenty of criticism. Commit to being a good employer. Make it a good place to work. Appreciation means something. Set long-range policy goals. Your most important job as an elected official is to set a long-range goal. Where do you want Muskogee to be in 5 years or 10 years? Number 4, understand you have a limited role. Not everything is your business. Let others do their job. As elected officials, you're in a very limited role, so no different than I am as a city attorney. My role is limited to certain things, and some things really are none of my business. Same as some things with the city are none of your business. There will come a time you'll ask the city manager about a personnel issue, and he's probably going to say, I wish I could tell you, but I really can't get into that. And it's his polite way of saying, that's really none of your business, because it's not. It may be an employee who had a drug problem. It may be an employee who has a health issue that required them to quit. It could be any number of things that really can't be disclosed to you, because in reality, some of it is none of your business. Same as some of mine is as city attorney, some things are none of my business. And we all have a limited role, and if we do our role well, the organization will strive. Lead by example. Ethics and conduct matter. Serve with dignity, others will too. Number 2, be responsive to the public, get input on difficult issues, protect everyone's interest. I know Mr. Reed mentioned that. It's an important part of what you do, and surveys show that. And number 1, this is a survey of elected officials around the state. Most important thing you can do to be successful as a city, to improve your city, and I know several of you, a number of you mentioned exactly this. Find a way to work as a team, and if we do that, we'll be successful. If we don't, we can guarantee failure. So it takes work, and it's good to see that you guys have been working toward that over a long period of time. So it really is an encouraging sign. Questions? We're here to answer whatever you have. I know you've been through this a couple of times, so really wanted to get through it quickly and answer anything we can answer. I know Bill can answer any of your insurance questions you may have. So, Roy, anything?
No, thank you both very much. And Bill, I referred to you as David in my introduction. I apologize for that. I was looking over here at him, and so I called
He
you
did
David
feel
Tackett,
insulted.
So, yeah, I apologize for that. So,
To extent.
Mayor, council people, thank you
Yes.
so much for letting us come back. We're very appreciative of your time, the fact that you're a part of OMAG, and we'll get with you and we'll inform them to complete the process. I think that was out.
Perfect.
Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've appreciated it and enjoyed it.
Thanks, Mayor.
And that brings us to this number 10 again. We need approval of the resolution number 2768.
And that will approve the resolution establishing the training and will also re-adopt the handbook for 2019-20.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carried. We didn't have anyone sign up to speak to us tonight, so we will be adjourned.